that I'm now starting the recording, you will see potentially a pop-up that'll come in front of your screen right now. You have to click on that to say, hey, I'm accepting that you're going to be recorded. Otherwise, you're going to see that pop-up all the way through the program. So all you have to do is click on this icon, click on that message that came up, and it'll disappear. All right. So I want to ask anybody in the group to raise their hand using that icon. Do you have a birthday in August? Is anybody here having a birthday in August? Anybody who Jackie, welcome. You don't have to disclose how old you are, but that's okay. But I'm glad that you're having a birthday. We want to celebrate your birthday. And I see Jen.
Thank you.
Jen is with us. Jen is going to be speaking to the group sometime in 2023. We're working on a program as we speak. So that's great. Anybody else here or late July? I'll give you late July. I'm a sort of like the carnival barker, so I'm going to throw in late July for any birthday that we missed. Anybody? Okay, so so I have something for the birthday people. And hold on a minute. Just give me 1 second.
I hope you don't sing, Jeffrey.
Right, you want me to vacuum the floors and do that? I'll do it tomorrow. You got that going on, okay.
Adorable.
Fun.
Okay, very good. So happy birthday, everyone! The two, Jackie and Jen. So terrific, and we do this as a matter of course now every meeting. So make sure that you come at least to the one that you are having your birthday. I also
Now I can say my age. I am 2 years old, and forget about the 8.
Well, happy birthday! It's terrific,
Yay,
and I want to throw a happy birthday out to Ben, who in late June was 94. So Ben, raise your hand so everyone can see you. So we want to give Ben a belated birthday wish as well. Okay, so I want to now move to starting the program, and I want to do a little bit of an intro for our first guest. It's our musical guest, and
analyzed 2 shots for improper placement of his golf ball yesterday.
And I would appreciate if everyone would mute themselves so that we don't have any interruptions now. Thank you. So just go and hit your mute button. And our video musical guest is Ali Halper, who is a Jewish musician, educator, and activist who lives in Germantown, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. She's a singer, a pianist, a drummer, and a guitar player. Ali writes songs for building community, working for collective liberation, and visiting different worlds. Her songs have been sung in national gatherings, song circles, and quiet moments of personal prayer, and has moved people all over the world. Ali's first album, called Loosen, was just released in April of 22. Ali believes deeply in the power of music to awaken us to the loss and hope we carry, expand our sense of possibilities, and connect us to each other and our collective strengths. So hold on 1 second so I get this back. Okay, thank you, Ali. And we're going to be starting the program in a second. And Daniel Seymour will be presenting with Ruthie and Manci his terrific story. And let me give you a little bit of sense of who Daniel is. Daniel Seymour is an economics professor. He has written 20 books in the business and higher education. He and his wife, Manci, Beran's daughter, live in Palm Springs, California, USA. Manci Beran was married to Kurt Beran for 69 years, has 2 children and 3 grandchildren. She worked for many years as a bookkeeper in a CPA company and received her bachelor degree from the University of Oregon. She has visited more than 35 countries with her husband when in the Army and in vacationing. Manci lives in Rancho Bernardo, California, USA. Ruth Mermelstein, who was married to Ernest Mermelstein for 61 years. She has 3 children, 12 grandchildren, and 51 great-grandchildren, Mazel tov. She makes regular visits to see her family in Israel and in Rancho Bernardo to visit her sister. She lives in Brooklyn in her home she and Ernest purchased in 1950. She calls her sister every night at exactly 7 o'clock. So I am going to pick up your PowerPoint, and we will.
You can put the first one up, actually.
Yep, getting there. Okay, and Daniel, you're going to take over the mic and take it over, please.
Okie dokie. Hello, everybody. I would like to begin with a quote. It says, "I've read everyone from Primo Levi and Viktor Frankl to the earnest and heartfelt memoirs of less illustrious individual survivors, each with their own special story." I actually didn't say that. Tommy said that in his book. And I've read his book, and I've read Frannie's Confessions, and I read Lucy Adlington's from last month. And these are all special stories. And I also believe From Auschwitz with Love is our own special story, their special stories. Next slide, Jeffrey.
Sorry, hold on a minute.
Okay, so the story begins with David and Emmy Grunberger, who were married in Czechoslovakia in 1920. Beautiful people. Next slide. By 1937, they had 6 children. Here's the family at Anshi's, who's in the back right up there, bar mitzvah. Also in the back row are the 2 older sisters, Manci with the bangs, who was 12 at the time, and Ruthie, who was 9, next to her on the left. And from a few years ago, here are the two sisters who are with us today and explain, I hope, the subtitle of the book, The Inspiring Memoir of 2 Sisters, Survival, Devotion, and Triumph. Next slide.
Oops, sorry. There we go.
I want to summarize a few things, and then I'm going to open this up with the girls, my girls. The family grew to 10, adding 2 more children after the family picture I showed. And unfortunately, all except Manci and Ruthie were murdered at Auschwitz. They worked at Auschwitz-Birkenau in the Canada section until December 1944, when they volunteered for another work transport that took them marching through the mountains, Sudeten, and to 7 different factories until they were saved. And this map here shows this is an entire story by itself, until they ended up all at the top at Denmark in April in 1945. Next slide. This is one of my favorite pictures. After a year in Sweden, recuperating, they look like just normal teenagers I just love this picture. This is when they were in the refugee camp in Sweden. The key special aspect of this book is that most of their stories comes after they went to US as refugees. From traumatic beginnings, what emerge are two unique stories. The sisters have different beliefs, interests, and coping methods, and yet their personal bond, as you will see, the selfless, unconditional love between them only grows throughout the years. Next slide, please. My background research for this story was largely informed by the research done by Françoise Ouzon in her book. And she's become a very good friend, and this is her editorial review of the book. And doing all of this research is really what informed me to write the book, which is really a combination of materials. So now, Manci and Ruthie, what I'm going to do is offer a set of questions and pictures, and hopefully we're going to do this together, okay? So if you could have the first slide. Which is a great picture. So I'm going to ask Manci, your husband right there, you met in Philadelphia, correct? And what was his background?
Kurt, excuse me, Kurt was born in Vienna, and by way of Panama, he wound up in the United States, volunteered for the army, was in the Philippines, and then stayed on in Japan, working for the American government as an interpreter, since he spoke quite a few languages. I met him a year after I got to the United States and married him less than a year later. We were married 69 years. He passed away 5 years ago. We have 2 daughters, 3 grandchildren, 2 granddaughters and 1 grandson. And that consists of our family.
Yeah.
We have 2 wonderful son-in-laws.
Oh, thank you very much. And on the right, the picture, and by the way, they were both married in 1948, is the picture with Ruthie and Ernest, and I love his top hat. Can you tell me a little bit about where Ernest is from, Ruthie?
Well, I met my husband, and I came to the States actually, and to Philadelphia, and my mother's sister lived there, and I met my husband in 1948. We got married, and we have 3 children and 12 grandchildren, and 2 of them live in Israel. My son David has a son in Jerusalem. My daughter has a daughter in Ramat Bat Shemesh, and matter of fact, they were here the other day, and I saw them all, and we have a wonderful family, and we're very happy with them.
Ruthie, where was Ernest from?
Ernest? Ernest was born actually in Goron, which is a small town next to Munkach, and he was going actually to school in Munkach because they didn't have any schools in that little town. But I met him through my uncle, really. My uncle lived in New York, and they used to go to my husband Ernest had family in Jersey, which is a few minutes away from Philadelphia. And then one day, my uncle asked Ernest to come and meet the 3 girls, my sister and my cousin Edith. And then 2 weeks later, his sister got married. We got an invitation to the wedding, and a couple of weeks later, I got a love letter. And every week he used to come and we used to go, sightseeing. And we went out for 10 months. And after 10 months, he proposed to me in the Philadelphia Zoo. My David said that I must have been the prettiest monkey there. That's why he proposed to me, okay? And we got married February 8, 1948. And as I said, we have 3 children, two sons and a daughter, and 12 grandchildren, many more great-grandchildren. And that's it, okay?
So in other words, Ernest is from the old country. They actually knew each other, or the families did.
Yeah,
From,
I knew my in-laws because I had my grandparents in Strobicho, which is right near Goron. And I used to, I met my mother-in-law with my sister-in-law, but I never met they were actually 5 children. They were 5 kids and 1 daughter, but just 3 boys survived and the rest of them died.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. Here are, I think it's interesting, Manci, Kurt went back in the army and he had an entire career in the army, right?
Yes, he actually went through ROTC and became a military officer, 2nd lieutenant, and then he became a part of the regular army by way of taking all sorts of exams. And that was his career for 20 years.
Right, great. And on the right-hand side, Ernest, I believe, in Garn was a baker. And then when he came here and in Brooklyn, didn't he end up starting his own jewelry company, Ruth?
My husband, actually, he was working in a bakery because he learned the trade in Europe. But then my brother-in-law was actually learning a jewelry line. And my younger brother-in-law became a partner of us, but Ernest had his watches in the trunk, and he was traveling all the way to Albany, and he picked up customers. And then later, he opened a store in Manhattan. All right, and that's it.
Yeah. Next slide, please. On the left-hand side, you already asked this, Manci. I think this is, you and Kurt, you were in Germany at the time.
Yes, we were in Germany, already stationed in the military.
But between his job and how many countries and have you lived in or visited?
We lived in at least 10 places, 10 addresses, but most of the time in the United States and Europe. But on our own, we visited at least 10 more countries.
And on the right-hand side, I think this is interesting, is that Ernest and Ruth bought a home in Brooklyn. I think it was in 1950. And I was going to ask the question, where do you live now, Ruth?
I live in Brooklyn.
In this
The same house.
in the same house.
No, in the same house, Brooklyn.
I live in the same house when we bought it. It's over 50 years already.
Yeah. And across the street lives.
Across the street, I have my daughter Evelyn in Charlotte. That's the best.
Yeah, you do have the best. The next slide, please.
Right.
I think this is interesting. On the left-hand side, Manci had a job, actually had a career, and also, if you can tell just for a second, she graduated from college. At what year and in what field did you get a degree in? Manci?
I got my degree in Spanish literature. I was the oldest student on campus, I think, but I loved school.
But you like to take courses throughout your life. When you were in Philadelphia, you were taking classes too.
School was my life. Being in school was anything I ever wanted to be. So whenever I had a chance to go back to school, I did.
Yep. And on the right, Ruthie, this is in the Western Wall, I believe. And this was
Right.
for what event?
That was okay. That was at my grandson's bar mitzvah. We were in Israel at the Western Wall, the whole family and some friends. Okay.
And the picture below is Evie and you.
And the bottom picture is the first time after the war, my husband and I, and I took along the only Evie, and we went to look for my grandmother's grave. And we found it in Strobicho, which is the small city next to Moncaj. And Evie is scrubbing the monument there because we couldn't make out the name. And it was my grandmother's memorial, right?
Yeah. Next one, please.
All right, this is
On the right, how many of the family do you have at your birthday, Ruth?
How many of your family did you have at the birthday?
how many of the families having your birthdays?
In the picture, how many people? How many people are in the picture?
Oh, how many people are in the picture? I really can't figure out. I know it's all families, and there's my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren, okay?
So what was the total number that we had just said? It was over 60. And on the left-hand side, Manci, who are those people?
Yeah, that's my whole family.
That's all of us.
I only have 2 daughters, 3 grandkids, which is 2 granddaughters and 1 grandson, and 2 wonderful son-in-laws.
Thank you so much.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you, guys. In summary, one of the other special aspects of this story is that it is not a novel. It is first and foremost a set of 2 integrated memoirs through the interviews with Manci and Ruthie. It has a diary materials from when they were in Sweden, a lot of preserved photographs that have been sent to an aunt in US, as well as historical materials. If you could show the next slide quickly. Because of that, we have a very special and wonderful website that is loaded with photographs that aren't in the book, the full translated diaries from Hungarian, videos, articles, maps. It is just loaded for educational and resource periods. And finally, I want to reinforce the importance of these kinds of what I call a passion project. I'm not a survivor or a son of a survivor. I'm a fallen Catholic who is an economics professor who had the privilege of telling Manci and Ruthie's love story. Regardless of how these valuable stories are discovered, they need to be told. And one final slide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And there we all signing books on behalf of Manci and Ruthie. Thank you. Thank you all.
Well, thank you, all of you, Daniel and Ruthie and Manci. Your story is beautiful. I just would like to ask you one quick question. When were you, how close is the city that you were came from to Košice, Czechoslovakia?
How far is Košice from you? Košice, how far is it from Moncaj? You're of Košice? Košice.
Oh yeah, no, Moncaj.
Košice
is Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, how far is it from?
How far? It's about a couple hours away.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you. We're going to have lots of questions, obviously, for all of you. And we're going to have that at the end of the program. So I am going to just stop the screen share here. And I want to turn it over to our next presenter, who I'm going to introduce in a second. And that is Tommy SCHNURMACHER. And
Shall I do?
on a second. Tommy was born in Budapest as a child of a Holocaust survivor. Tommy's an award-winning political pundit and broadcaster, and he hosts a highly rated daily talk show in Montreal for more than 20 years. He spent a week with John and Yoko Lennon at the famous Montreal Bed Inn for Peace. He covered the Academy Awards no less than 13 times and is proud to say that Meryl Streep once stepped on his toe in the lobby of the Beverly Hills Hotel. Tommy is the author of a new memoir, Makeup Tips from Auschwitz, How Vanity Saved My Mother's Life. And so I'm happy and honored to present to the group Tommy, and I'm going to let you take it away, Tommy. And you can see that you are in shared mode here, so you can see everybody.
Great, thank you very much. It's an honor to be speaking to the Jewish Culture and Holocaust Remembrance group. It was terrific hearing that amazing story that we just heard. I'm going to fill you in on what I have lined up for you this evening, actually this afternoon here. I'm going to fill you in on an amazing lady that I knew very well, my mother, and a toast to Mom, Anu, L'chaim. You'll hear about what happened with me growing up in Montreal, working for CJD radio, and a lot of what I picked up from her. I'm also going to share what it was like as a 6-year-old escaping from Hungary in the middle of the night and growing up as an immigrant in Montreal. But before I even start that, I want to give you a couple of stories to give you a taste of my mom's character. Okay, so one of these stories, my father was a rabbi. He was also a Holocaust survivor from Mauthausen, and I'll get to their Holocaust experiences in a moment. But my father had a little synagogue, a little shul, and my mother was in charge of the tickets, of selling tickets for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And one day she got a call from someone, and this is what the call was like. Mrs. SCHNURMACHER, I want to buy tickets for the Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur service, but I don't want to come for the whole thing. I want to come just for the Yizkor. If I come just for the Yizkor, how much is the ticket? And my mother replies, you know what, before I answer you, I want to tell you, my favorite movie is Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. You know what, my favorite scene in the movie is the love scene when Elizabeth Taylor is kissing Richard Burton. If I go to the Van Horn movie theater and I want to see just the kissing scene, how much is the ticket? So that gives you an idea of Mom, of what she was like. On another occasion, many years later, Mom and Dad are living in a duplex. They live downstairs, they have tenants upstairs, and the phone rings and it's the tenant. And the tenant says, Mr. SCHNURMACHER, there's no heat. My mother says, move to Florida. The woman calls back and says, Mr. SCHNURMACHER, I'm serious, there's no heat. And my mother says, well, don't walk around naked like a tzatzkele and close the window. It's not over yet. The woman calls the cops. She calls the police. The police arrive at my mother's door and they say, we have a complaint. What's the complaint? Well, we have a complaint from your tenant. Your tenant says that there's no heat. What are you? The heat police. Go catch a crook. That's what she tells them. And my father says, who was that? Mom said, oh, somebody selling chocolate. So I think you're getting an idea of Mom's character. We arrived right after the Hungarian Revolution. I didn't speak one word of English or one word of French, which you need in Montreal, one or the other. And first day at school, I don't understand what they're talking about. I'm sitting there, the teacher's talking, but I don't know what she's saying. I don't know what's going on, but everybody gets a pencil, everybody gets a piece of paper. And then I see that they're picking up the pencil, they're writing something, and I don't know what to do. So I look next to me, there's a girl sitting next to me, and I see what she's doing. She's picking up the pencil, and at the top of the paper, she's writing M-A-R-I-E. Okay, now, so what do? I pick up the pencil, I write on my paper, M-A-R-I-E. So the teacher got 2 pieces of paper with Marie's name on it because I had no idea what they were, what they were doing. Now, what did I inherit from her in terms of chutzpah? There's a story I wanted to tell you. I found out that you could go to the reading was extremely important. Reading was extremely important to my parents and to me. And so I found out that you could join the Jewish Public Library for 5 cents. For children, the membership was 5 cents. And you could get 3 books for free and take them home and read them for 2 weeks and then bring them back. I thought this was wonderful. I had 5 cents. So off I went to the library, put down my 5 cents. I want to join the library. I want to take out some books. And they said, yes, but you have to have your parent's signature. And I didn't have my parents' signature. They weren't coming home till later. And so I went on the corner of Mount Royal and St. Urban in Montreal, and I asked adults to forge my parents' signature. And one after another, they turned me down until I found one lady with a long ponytail. She signed the name Mr. SCHNURMACHER, and I got my books. Another story, this is part of what the immigrant experience was like, being a child of Holocaust survivors. I didn't have I forgot my lunch. So the teacher, Miss Wadman, says, Tommy, I'll take you to the snack bar when we get lunch. She says to me, would you like a hot dog? Hot dog? No, I said, no, even in Canada, it's impossible. They're not going to cook a dog. I mean, that can't be. They're not cooking it. It must be some kind of candy, right? It's probably some kind of candy. So I say, okay, I'll have a hot dog. The hot dog arrives. Oh, it's meat. It's not kosher. If I eat it, I'm going to die. So I don't know what to do. I don't want to embarrass the teacher. So my teacher said, I said, look, what's that up there? While she's explaining that, I take the hot dog, throw it on the floor. And she said, oh, he must be very hungry. On another occasion, I went to a friend's house who was from Ukraine, and he was hungry, and we was having steak. I'd already had lunch, and he said he's having a steak, and he said that he's thirsty. And so what does his mother do? His mother gets up, she goes to the fridge and brings him a glass of milk. I see this, I knock the milk onto the floor. I run downstairs to my mother and tell her that the lady upstairs wants to kill her son because she's serving him milk and meat. And if he eats milk and meat together, he's going to die. And so my mother explains to me that's not quite the way it works. Now, I was talking too much in class, which turned out to be okay because I became a talk show host later on. But the teacher didn't like it, and she said that I must not talk in class 500 times. I tell this to my mother, and she is like absolutely appalled that they would give such punishment. And what does my mother do in terms of the love of my mother for me? She writes it herself. She writes 500 times, I must not talk in class, and then signs it. And I bring it into the teacher, and the teacher looks at it and says, this isn't your handwriting. Who wrote this? I said, my mother wrote it. Your mother wasn't the one talking in class. You're the one who's supposed to write this. So then I go back and tell my mother what happened. So you know what my mother did? She wrote 500 times, I must not talk in class, in a child's handwriting in order to make sure that I didn't have to do it. Now that's the nice part. Now, some of the part that wasn't so good perhaps is overprotection. Holocaust survivors are often overprotective of their children. And in Montreal, come to Canada as a kid, you want to learn how to skate, right? So my father buys me a pair of skates and I'm about to go skating. And my mother says, okay, if you want to go skating with Tommy, go ahead, you take him skating, he will fall, he will hurt his head, he'll crack his head open, the blood will come out, the pink and the blood will make the eyes red. I hear this, I'm freaking out, I don't want to go skating at all. So I don't. And on one morning, one specific morning, Mom said, that's too cold, you can't go to school. I said, what do you mean I can't go to school? She says, too cold. I said, all the other children are going to school. Why are the other children going to school? She says, because Canadian parents don't love their children. So she taught me that only Hungarian parents love their children. And of course, I believe that. Now, later on in life, I decided, I took Mom with me to New York City. And when we arrived there, she says, we have to go home, all the noise at Grand Central Station. She says, oh, there's war broken out. We have to leave. I said, we're not leaving. There's no war breaking out. Let's go, we're visiting New York. So we're walking along the street and she sees a store that sells brassieres, nothing else but brassieres, right? And oh, she has to go in there. She's never seen a store like that. So she goes in there and buys a brassiere, and we go to the hotel. And then she goes into the bathroom, she tries it on, and then she comes out and she's very sad. She says, it doesn't fit. Tommy, would you be sweetheart? Would you take it back to the store? I said, I don't think they take brassieres back. I'm 14 years old, but I listened to my mom. I go back to the store and I said, my mother was here. She's a good looking lady, Hungarian accent. She brought a bra, it doesn't fit. I'd like to return it. We don't take bras back. I said, are you the owner of the store? Yes, I'm the owner of the store. I said, how long has the store been here? This store, kid, has been here for 35 years. I said, oh. In that 35 years, sir, how often has a kid come here trying to return his mother's bra? And he says, okay, kid, you get the refund, and I get the refund. Now, another time, I took Mom to the Academy Awards, to the Oscars. And this is about as exciting as you can get. This is very exciting. And I have my press pass, I'm a journalist, and my friend Denny, who works for Associated Press, she also has a press pass. And she says, you know what, I'm only covering the arrivals. Why don't you use my press pass for your mom? Great. So there's Mom and me standing in front of the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion as the celebrities are arriving for the Academy Awards. Then all of a sudden, Denny comes back and says, uh-oh, I was only supposed to cover the arrivals, but now the guy who's supposed to cover the whole thing, he's not here. He called in sick. I have to cover the whole thing. I'm so sorry, Tommy. I have to ask for my press pass back. So I take the press pass from Mom and give it back to Denny. And Mom and I are standing there, and all of a sudden a Los Angeles cop comes over and he says, which one of you is Tommy SCHNURMACHER? And my mother pops up, oh, officer, I'm so sorry. He is Tommy SCHNURMACHER. I don't have a press pass. It's my fault, but don't worry. I will go home by myself, alone, and I will walk home alone at night, alone, just by myself in Los Angeles. So of course the guy is charmed, puts his arm around her, and accompanies us to a place where we can really see what happened. Another thing, now this is again, and I'll get to how she survived Auschwitz in a moment, but just her chutzpah in general. I also took Mom to the Cannes Film Festival, and we went to the casino, and I said, Anyu, when you cheat at Huszonegyes, when you cheat at blackjack at 21, at home, it's cute, and we find it funny. But if you do it here at the casino in France, you go to jail. So it's not a good idea. Don't worry, I won't cheat. And she does. And then I take her to the Moulin de Mougins, a fantastic restaurant in France. And guess who we see there as soon as we come in and are taken to our table? She notices that Omar Sharif is sitting at another table. And I'm explaining to her, Anyu, you can't go over there. You can't ask for an autograph. You can't bother these celebrities. They come here. They want to enjoy an evening. You can't bother them. Anyway, I'm talking to her back because she's already gotten up. She's walking towards them already. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I'm looking in the other direction. I can't even look there. I'm so nervous. And what are they going to do? Are they going to throw her out? Anyway, I look over there, and what do I see? Omar Sharif is standing up. He's going to another table. He's bringing over a chair to his table so that Mom can sit down next to him at his table. And the next thing I see is Omar Sharif's hand, and my mother is holding Omar Sharif's hand, and she's doing this. She's reading his palm. And this is fascinating because she doesn't know how to read palms. She's never read a palm before. But this is part of just the chutzpah, and that is what happened. Part of her chutzpah. This chutzpah goes way back. When she's born in Hungary in Debrecen, she and her sister are walking down the street one day thinking they're bored, life is boring. Next thing, they're on a cattle car hurtling towards Auschwitz. And when she gets to Auschwitz, my mother as a teenager, she doesn't like, get this, she doesn't like the outfit she's wearing. She's chosen by Mengele that she can live because she's young. Doesn't like the outfit. She exchanges her ration of bread for needle and thread and sews up her outfit so that it fits a little better. She takes the swill that they gave for morning coffee and she uses it to polish her shoes. And in the middle of the roll call, the Zählappell in the morning, when they ask her, could you mute whoever that is? Anyway, in the middle of the roll call, Irma Greza, who was one of the female commandants in Auschwitz, says, "What is a Jew?" Okay, there we go. Sorry. Greza says, how can a Jew be dressed like this in a place like this? And my mother tells her the truth, tells her what happened, and she becomes my Greza's chichkash and her personal assistant. She helps her clean her bicycle and clean her boots and do all of those things. And that is how my mother survived Auschwitz, because of this vanity of hers. And Greza who was a vicious monster. They called her the beast of Bergen-Belsen. She's an absolute monster. But she even arranged for my mother to visit her sister, Avi Altman, who was working in the Canada section of Auschwitz, going through the things that the Jews had left and sorting through that. So that is how my mother managed to do that. So that's what I inherited from her: this chutzpah, courage, and tenacity, and also in terms of character. Like my father had the synagogue I mentioned to you before, and a lot of the elderly ladies were sitting in the front for the high holiday services. There's the front, and to the side there was a little section, and that's where the ladies were on the side. And the president of the synagogue told my father, you know what, that's prime real estate where the old ladies are sitting. Why don't you have the old ladies sit in the back? And we can sell those tickets for more of an amount. And my father said, yes, okay, fine. And then comes the high holidays, and the ladies, the elderly ladies, are sitting almost all of them Holocaust survivors. My father's shul was called the Martir och Templum. He dedicated an entire shul to the memory of the people killed in Auschwitz and all their relatives. And when he sold when he retired from the shul and the shul was sold and amalgamated with another one, my father said, there's only one condition: the money doesn't matter. What you do with the Sefer Torahs, you can have them. The only thing is all of these names have to be put up in the new synagogue. And they're there to this day, all of those names of people who died in Auschwitz in 44. But anyway, at his little synagogue, when they told him that the old ladies, they have to move to the back, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur comes, the old ladies are still sitting there. And the president said, Rabbi, didn't you hear what I told you, that I wanted the old ladies moved to the back? He says, well, I went to a higher authority. He says, what do you mean a higher authority? I'm the president of the shul. My father says, I went to a higher authority. I went to God. I don't sit old ladies in the back. I don't move the old ladies to sit exactly where they are, which is what they did. Now, this also gave me chutzpah. How much chutzpah? This much chutzpah. John Lennon and Yoko Ono were coming to Montreal for a wedding. And I said, called my friend, let's go. We'll see one of the Beatles. And she says, there's gonna be thousands of kids, we'll never get in. I said, then we'll come home. Let's give it a shot. So I convince her to go. She doesn't want to go. I convince her to go. And I bring along a little set of crayons because I know that Yoko's daughter, 6 years old, Kyoko, was there. So we get to the hotel, the Queen Elizabeth Hotel downtown. I heard they're on the 17th floor. My friend wants to hit the 17 button. I said, no. There's nobody outside, nobody in the lobby. She wants to hit 17. We're in the elevator. I said, no. 18. We hit 18, one floor up, then go down a flight of stairs. And there's some commotion near one of the rooms, suite 1738. We walk over there. I knock on the door. And as the door opens, there's a hand on the back of my neck. We're about to be thrown out. The door opens. There's Yoko and Kyoko standing in the doorway. And the security guard says, oh, don't worry, madam, I'm going to throw them out. She says, Yoko says, no one's going to throw out. These are our friends. She's never seen me before in my life. Kyoko says, can I have the crayons? I said, well, not if we're going to be thrown out. No one's being thrown out. Come on in. I come in. Little Kyoko gets the crayons, and Yoko turns to me and she says, would you like to meet John? Can you imagine hearing that as a teenager, right? One of the people, would you like to meet John? Yes. We meet John, we interview him, we stay there for all, no one's throwing us out, so we continue to stay there. And we order Puya Fusé white wine for Tommy Smothers and Petula Clark, and all kinds of celebrities are walking in and out. And I feel bad for little Kyoko. She's stuck in this hotel room with these adults, right? I said, you know what? I can take her to play with my sister. I have a kid sister who's the same age, 6 years old. Is it okay? Can I take her to play with my sister? Yes. Get this. They give us Kyoko. They don't have our name, our address, our phone number, nothing. And just hand us the kid. Can you imagine this happening today? And we take Kyoko to play in the park with my sister. My mother makes her, chocolate milk, and we're there, and we stayed there for an entire week. At the end of the week, they give us $150 each, some autographed photos, and my friend who I'm with, she sees some papers lying around. These are the lyrics to Give Peace a Chance, which was recorded inside the hotel suite. She takes those lyrics, and fast forward a few decades later, she sells them on Christie's for £350,000. A friend of mine says that I should sue her because she should give me some of them, half the money or some of the money. If not for me, she'd never been there. And I said, I don't think so. Anyway, a friend tries to convince me to sue. I decide not to sue her I don't sue her at all. And that's how I avoided war over give peace a chance. And I go into the details of what happens more in the book. But I got a lot of the chutzpah that I have from my mom for a lot of things having to do with work, that gutsiness, that chutzpah. But there's also catastrophization that comes with it too. Like, you know, she was overprotective of me. I'm like unbelievably overprotective of her. If she didn't answer the phone on the third ring, I'd go crazy. So eventually I moved into the same building. She lived on the 12th floor. I lived on the 3rd floor. She didn't answer the phone on the first 3 rings. I take the elevator up, make sure she's okay, just to, because of that. And as a result of everything she taught me, and just her attitude of survival and triumph after everything she had gone through, it really helped me. And I was in New York City when I remember we're in New York City in March of 2020, just as COVID was starting, and they're saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. There's no such thing. There's no COVID in New York. There's a little outbreak in New Rochelle, but there's no COVID in New York." And I'm thinking, wait a second, Kennedy Airport. It takes 20 minutes to drive by Kennedy Airport. There are tens of thousands of people from every city on the planet getting off planes, going to New York City. No cases of COVID in all of Manhattan seems weird to me. So anyway, needless to say, we left New York, came back to Montreal. The reason I brought up COVID is because of my mother's experiences in the Holocaust. And they said, "Oh my God, COVID, we can't go out, we can't do this, we can't do that." I said, "Hello, are you crazy? You're comparing what this is to what they went through, what that we're not sure that the film we wanted on Netflix is going to be on in time, or they're not showing it yet, versus everybody around you wants to kill you and there's no food. There's no comparison." So to me, when I thought about what my mother went through and what we were going through, picnic, by comparison, picnic. And that's also when you're a little child, you don't tell your problems. You don't share your problems with a mother who's a Holocaust survivor because of that. How can whatever happened to you, how does that rank in terms of what happened to her? You're not going to share these stories. So that's not good, because as a child, your job is to be a child. In my mother's case, she told me my job was to make her happy, which is not the case. You know what deal she made with me when we went to New York City? Like, I found out much, much later that if a parent takes kids to New York City, they want to make sure that the kid has lots to do that the kid likes to do, right? Not in my family. You know what the deal was? We go to dress shops only. But Mom, I also want to go to a museum. Okay, 7 dress shops, 1 museum. That was her deal. So that's what happened. I went through and of course I had to read what the price was, because she didn't want to put on glasses to see, because that wouldn't be right. So I had to read each price to her. I also had to pretend that every 16 was a 12, right? I couldn't tell her the right size, obviously. So when we're in New York, and then we went to museum, and after 10 minutes, she says, "Enough, this is scary, too boring, let's go." And when summer, I'm coming to a close, in the summer when we went to the Laurentians, you know what, one of the things she did, we rented a house for 6 weeks in the Laurentians on the main street of a little town in the Laurentians. And she'd come home, and the first thing she would do, of course, in terms of cleanliness, she cleaned under the linoleum. Never mind the top of the linoleum. She rolled up the linoleum, cleaned under it. And when we came home, one of the things she had to do was look under the bed, every bed. Why was she looking for murderers? She's looking for murderers. So as a kid, this does not instill any sense of security. In terms of guts, we went from Valmorin, little town in Laurentians, to St. Agathe, a little bigger town. What does she do with me, the two of us? Hitchhikes. We hitchhike on the highway to get to St. Agathe. And she's wearing, at the time, hot pants, right? Short. And what had happened, we're talking 1960. We're talking about very conservative Roman Catholic Quebec, right? And she gets arrested, right? And she gets a fine, and they tell her, well, you're not going to keep you in jail or anything, but you're not supposed to wear such short there, you know. And I'm going to end with this. Just came to my head this second, so I have to end with this. In the synagogue, you know, in Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, they do this donations, like you make donations to the shul, to the rabbi, to the sisterhood, whatever, right? And my mother's sitting there, there's a woman behind her saying, when will they be finished with this business? So my mother is just fuming. So she slowly turns around to look at the woman behind her. And she says, this is not a business. The store where you bought those billings, those handcuffs, that's a business. She's making fun of her all the jewelry. She's encrusted with jewelry. And in Hungarian, handcuffs, the word for handcuffs, bilincs, azok a bilincs, ami maga hordott, az egy business. It was a magnificent moment. So she had lots of guts. My father was, of course, utterly appalled by all this. But anyway, they had a very happy life together. He didn't didn't want to have anything to do with money, anything official. Speak to my vibe, he'd say, and that was it. Now, I'm pretty much done. I just want to show you, this is what the book looks like. Makeup tips from Auschwitz, how vanity saved my mother's life. And I'm old fashioned. I don't have any PowerPoints, but I'm going to show you very quickly some of the pictures. That's mom looking pretty glamorous there, right? On top, on the beach. And then later on, this is before, this is after. Both the first one is before Auschwitz. On the beach, this is mom in triumph after Auschwitz. And see the vanity? She's looking at herself in the mirror. Now, wait. Now, then she said she often thought that she looked exactly like, this is their wedding picture, mom and dad. This looks pretty good. This is mom and me at my bar mitzvah. And remember I said she liked to think she looked like Elizabeth Taylor? So take a look at this. This is Elizabeth Taylor. Sorry, this is Elizabeth Taylor. A clipping from the Gazette, that's Liz Taylor. And this is mom. See, she'd see a picture in the paper that looked like that. So she'd pose like that and see to show the resemblance. Now, look at this top picture. You see mom in the dark coat, right? That's mom. And beside her is a picture of Liz Taylor also wearing furs. So to show the resemblance, you see that? Now, as I was doing the research for this book, get this, I wondered what's underneath that clipping. You can almost see the staple there on the right. What's underneath that clipping of Liz Taylor? Me. That was me standing next to mom in the store. She covered me up with a picture of Elizabeth Taylor. Look at that. That's me and mom at the store. She takes this picture and clips on Liz Taylor to show the resemblance. And I found that out later. This is me and mom in the garden at the Canadian Consul General in Los Angeles when I took her to the Oscars. She's still looking good, right? That's family picture. Me, mom, dad, and my sister Cindy. And look at that, at age 95, mom's still looking good.
Wow.
There you go. So that's the book, and that's my presentation. And you have been, and I've seen the audience, Frannie and everyone else. Thank you so much for the reaction. It's very important that the presentation is as good as the people who are watching it. And it was a thorough pleasure speaking to you and sharing the story of my mom with you.
Well, thank you, Tommy. I was laughing as we go, and there were many titles like Frannie, who's just going absolutely gum smack and love and your stories. So thank you so much. It's terrific. And next up is actually going to be Frannie. So I'm going to be introducing you, Frannie. So hold on a second. Okay, Frannie Sheridan, throughout her journey from trauma to nirvana, performer, writer, and cookie eater, Frannie Sheridan has been entertaining and educating audience internationally for decades. Raised to believe that sharing the truth of her identity would get her killed, a child of Holocaust survivors from Vienna and Germany, Frannie ultimately journeyed out of the dark wormhole of PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, into PTGJO, post-traumatic joy. Using truth-telling and through performances as therapy on wheels, all of the while collecting mayoral awards for her solo character shows, The Wallensteins. Frannie's internationally acclaimed, darkly humorous, moving historical memoir, Confessions of a Jewish Shiksa, is receiving soul-warming media around the world. So with my friend and with great pleasure, I want to introduce Frannie to all of us here. We will warmly say hello to you. And I'm going to start your presentation. So just give me a second here. And so there we go. And oh, but I have to do something else silly. So let me share my screen first, dummy. Okay. Okay. So welcome. And I'm going to give the mic over to Frannie. So thank you very much.
Oh, first of all, thank you so much, Jeffrey, for organizing this. This is not a small job, and Facebook and all social media that's given you a hard time should be so lucky to have you, and I really mean that. So I wanted to say that, first of all, oh my goodness, Tommy, that was so hysterical and so moving and deep, and in solidarity, since you asked me to choose your glasses earlier, I put on my pink ones. I replaced them. Is this all right with you? Okay. The other thing is, Daniel, beautiful homage to your family, and you're obviously a very prized son-in-law, gorgeous. Oh, and I also wanted to address that Blima had mentioned in the chat that my internet is unstable. So I just would like to let you know that may be the case. I don't know why, but at least I'm not unstable. So, you know, it's the best of both worlds. Well, then again, talk to my ex-husband, he may not agree. So I just want to say it is such an honor to be here. I'm having so much fun with the book, and I want to briefly address that the reason that I wrote the book was because after decades of, you know, using my vanity, which your mother did so geniusly, Tommy, I suppose it was a combination of vanity and the fact that I was stuck in paralyzing emotional post-traumatic stress disorder, which I inherited from both my parents, who are both Jewish Holocaust survivors. I decided to write a memoir, and although my shows that I had the pleasure of performing internationally, literally for decades, were, you know, were very healing in many, many ways. I got to a point where it became toxic to share my story, initially because, you see, I was brought up with this secret. I was not allowed to tell anyone I was Jewish, you see, even though both my parents were Jewish Holocaust survivors. And by the way, Manci, my father was from Vienna. You may show the first picture, please, Jeffrey, sir. This is a picture of my beautiful parents. My father, Bernie, who, by the way, is wearing a captain's uniform. He eventually, after escaping yada, 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 you know, joined the Canadian Army. And this is my father, who was born in Vienna in 1913, and my beautiful mother, Liesel, who was from Bremen, Germany. And, you know, they, Orthodox Jewish families, you know, my mother was working, as many Orthodox young women did at that time, as a kind of a nanny, being trained to run an Orthodox household nearby. She was being groomed. And I actually met that family that had hired her, and remember her so well. And on Kristallnacht in 1938, you know, my mother's family home in Bremen, Germany, was attacked by the brown shirts, the Nazis, and my grandmother, Selma Zwinicki, their family name was Zwinicki, was murdered. The story is that the Nazis came looking for the Schlüssel, the key to the synagogue, which my grandfather was apparently in charge of, and he escaped over the rooftops. He didn't want them to burn down the synagogue, and they shot my beautiful grandmother. So, my mother went through so many horrors surviving at that time, barely escaping all kinds of atrocities, you name it. My mother's, one of her brothers was in Auschwitz. The way that she found out, by the way, about the murder, and this is depicted in the William Shirer book, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, my grandmother's murder. And the way that my mother found out that her mother was murdered was that her brother, he somehow, shoeless, escaped from their family home in Bremen, Germany at this time, and made it to Hamburg, where my mother was working as a nanny, and let her know, and it was Shabbos. So, that's such a heartbreak. And, that's one of many, many horrors that my darling mother survived. And now my father, Bernie Siegel, was, also Orthodox Jewish in Vienna, and very, very close to his paternal grandfather, who was a rabbi. And he knew who he was. He knew that he was Jewish. He was taught all the books of the Torah as a young man, and he adored his grandfather, and they were very, very close, even though my father endured, ridiculous amounts of anti-Semitism as a little boy, being, just ridiculed and spat at by his teacher and classmates, and made to, crawl home through the ditch to his family home. And so it didn't just start in 1938. This was, all a horrific buildup, as, many of you know. And so, they were amazing survivors and amazing people. My father ultimately was studying at the University of Vienna to become a doctor, and anti-Semitism was growing and becoming more and more horrific. And they didn't know each other, by the way, when they were in Europe. This is after they met and obviously married, and I'll get to that in a moment. But the story of my father is such that when he was a young medical student at the University of Vienna, and by the way, he studied with Freud, who was just one of the profs there. He was not the big deal that, he was made out to be in terms of fame. And my dad had a lifelong friendship with Anna Freud, as it turns out, and that's a whole other trajectory of another story. But so ultimately, my father tried so hard to convince his parents and his siblings to leave Vienna with him, because things were getting horrific. And one day he left his classes and went to downtown Vienna, and he saw the Führer out there with all of the Nazis chanting death to the Jews. And so he had tried so hard to convince his family to leave, but they wouldn't. They, like so many Jews, said, "Listen, they had a family business. Our parents are Gentiles. They love us. All of you kids play together." And anyway, my father came home, and on the way home, he ran into one of his classmates who had joined, the Nazi regime, because many of the Gentiles had to join the Nazi party just to save their own necks, of course. But he took my father into an alleyway, and he showed him a list of people who were going to be taken away the next day. My dad's name was on the list. He said, you got to get out. You've got to get out tonight. So my dad went home, and by this time, you know, tragically, his family had already been taken away. And, you know, the house was, you know, full of blood, and my father packed just a few small items in a knapsack, and he made his way to the bridge which connects Austria to Switzerland in the middle of the night, hiding in the bushes. And, you know, he was like terrified, obviously, and he heard Nazis going back and forth, and, you know, in the middle of the night, and he finally worked up his courage, and he escaped over the bridge on his hands and his knees. And he used to tell me, you know, the bridge squeaked and I could hear it. He was very dramatic storyteller. And of course, he wanted to protect us kids in the best way that he knew by telling these stories. But, you know, as you know, Tommy shared, it was, you know, these stories were so much bigger than we were. And I was a little girl. And so ultimately my father escaped to France. He joined the French army. He was a medic because he had been a medical student at the University of Vienna. And he was saved by a priest, Père Goison, who I got to meet, by the way, when he took me on a trip to Paris. I hid him in the seminary, tried very hard to get my father to convert to Catholicism, but my father said, I don't change my religion as easily as I don't change my shirt as easily as I don't change my religion as easily as I change my shirt. So I was right the first time. Anyway, and he would tell me that story over and over again. And there's a reason for that. And I will get to that in a minute too. But ultimately, my father fought at the Battle of Dunkirk, and they were running out of medical supplies, and the Nazis were coming down, you know, the beach. Many of you know these famous scenes. And my father, you know, he said he lifted a small infant from its dead mother's breast, and the milk was still warm, and he handed the infant into the hands of another woman nearby, and you know, he was out of supplies. He didn't know what to do. And so he ran into the English Channel, and the Nazis were coming closer and closer, and he decided he was going to take his life. And, you know, he recited the Shema. And but the good news is he was rescued by a British freighter who he said, you know, pulled him up by the anchor, and they called him Fritz. Of course, he didn't have any papers. They didn't know if he was a Jew or a German. He had this, you know, strong Austrian accent, and they took him to London and put him in solitary. And I used to say, but Daddy, wasn't that scary being all alone in a prison cell? And he said, I had clean sheets and I was safe, you know, and you can understand that, right? And so anyway, eventually, after a lot of hoopla, he made his way over in one of the boats. Now we'll go back to my mother and her family. It took many jumping through many hoops with the Gestapo for her family to finally get out what was left of the family. You know, this is all in my memoir, Confessions of a Jewish Chick. So there's so many details. So I'll just hit the bullet points if I may. So they both ended up at the port of Montreal, and not together. And so one day, my beautiful parents were walking on Mount Royal. It's very scenic and gorgeous, and they spied each other. And there's my father, you know, strutting around in his Canadian military garb, and my mother, who, you know, certainly had vanity, kind of like very different to Tommy's mother, but she used to wear her hair up in these, you know, Rita Hayworth style rolls, and she had blue-black hair, and they were madly in love. And so my father, of course, didn't have his papers when he came over. He had to redo all of his medical training all over again. And finally they got married. And the earlier picture was a picture of my parents with their first two, who are 15 years older than I am. And that is, those are the identical twins, my eldest sisters, and they look so happy. I love this picture. And I inherited my mother's jacket and my father's mustache, so that's a good thing. And then the next picture, please, Jeffrey, is a picture of the so this is 4. So the twins are here, and you're thinking, why are they in these confirmation outfits, and or maybe it's first communion? I don't know. I don't remember. But these are rituals that kids go through when they are in Christian schools. And there's my eldest brother, and that is Margie, my sister. And so Margie's 11 years older than I am, and these are my 4 eldest beloved siblings. So what happened was, after my parents married, my father's first medical practice was in Morse, Saskatchewan, which is like a little it was at that time a rednecky town, kind of akin to any Midwestern town at that time in America, in the States. And of course, they didn't know what what kind of place they were going to. Was my dad's first practice, and he was excited, and they had, the eldest 2 kids. And at that time, these other 2 weren't born. They just looked so beautiful and mischievous to me. Anyway, and so they were the only Jews in the town, and it was pretty hard to get kosher food, you name it. My eldest sisters, the twins, actually remember my mother used a soap with a red dot and a soap with a blue dot, of course, for Fleische, and Milcha for meat and milk, to keep them separate. So they have these memories, which are amazing. And in 1951, my father was practicing, and a German doctor who lived there, who practiced there, Schmidt, and his wife burst into my father's office and beat him savagely, and told him that he had to get out of town, or that they would turn, his entire family into dog food. So a court case ensued, and at that time, of course, it's many documentaries have been made since then about Morse, Saskatchewan, and different places, that they were a haven for Nazis who came over. And that's a whole other story. We won't get into it. So, no surprise that this happened. Anyway, the court case ensued, and Dr. Schmidt was fined $20 for assault, and his wife $15. And so my father's PTSD, was completely triggered. And he thought, what is the point of being Jewish in Canada, in another country now, if I'm going to lose my whole family yet again, like he had in Europe? So he forced my very religious mother. She felt such a tie to her mother, who, as I mentioned earlier, had been murdered on Kristallnacht, Selma Zwinicki. And, it was the beginning of the end of their marriage, I believe. I understand both of them, and I fully get that desire to protect. Boy, do I ever. And so what happened is, could we have the next slide, please, Jeffrey? Now, what happened was, I'm just going to bullet point it here. Fast forward, we are now 7. And this, of course, is my father with a mustache, and my mother, and me with, this is my little brother, and my brother, who's 2 years old. There's 7 of us, right? Nice big Jewish family, you would think, but no. What happened was, so my father actually brought the family, and of course there were less of them at the time. I think it was 2 years after the assault, the so-called assault, in 1951. He went to Punachai, which was a bigger city, the closest big city, and actually converted the family to Catholicism. It was a bishop who led the ceremony, and he anglicized our family name from Siegel, this is Bernie Siegel, to Sheridan. Changed religions, went underground, cut off ties with all extended relatives, who spent the next 45 years looking for us. Now, so ultimately we lived in Ottawa, Canada. This was taken by the famous photographer Karsh, by the way. And I grew up thinking we were Catholic. Kids listen to what their parents say. I went to a nice, Catholic school, St. Basil's. I was, confirmed, baptized, of course. I don't remember that part. Given first communion, the whole Megillah. there weren't Holocaust survivors depicted on television. As a matter of fact, my father disallowed us to have a television until I was 11 years old. And that's a whole other story that's also in the book. But, you know, you don't question your parents. You know, we went to church every Sunday religiously, you know, and my dad, the thing is, he was like, you know, my parents were Eastern European Jews, you know, we get to church. I thought my father's accent was European. You know, he'd say, hello, Father O'Malley, you know, so good to be in church. I didn't know, you know, but the whole thing was like a dark comedy. And like my mother would make what she called triangle shaped cookies, you know, Hamantaschen. You know, she observed the holidays, but undercover. We did have Knedlach, you know, Manischewitz stuff, but of course she called them chicken dumplings, and we had chicken dumpling soup on Friday, those kinds of things. So I figured, you know, you do what kids do. You first of all, you want to fit in. I thought it was weird that they had these accents, and you know, I adopted some accents as a kid because my parents had them, and I was corrected sometimes in school. Like I think I said radiator or something, and it, you know, the Canadian way to say it was like, you know, just a lot more gentle. I spoke with a little bit of an accent because you just take on and you love and you listen to, you know, your parents when you're little kids. So that's what I did. May I have the next slide, please, Jeffrey? And there I am when I was born. And, you know, I was a happy kid in general. My parents tried the best they could to do, you know, we do, as we know, we do as well as we can. And they did beautifully. Go ahead, please. Next slide, Jeffrey, sir. And there I am, as I think I was about 5 or 6, in front of the fireplace at home. I had my 4 eldest sisters. Some of my family is on, by the way, and I just want to send them so much love. And when I was a little girl, my elder siblings were so incredibly loving and kind and doting. I really had, you know, I just had a great group of siblings. I could rent them out. They were so great. May I have the next slide, please? Now, so here we are, gingerbread man, you know what I mean? I used to joke about the fact, you know, because I did a lot of stand-up comedy, and like in my first play, by the way, which let's leave it at this slide here for a minute. And what happened to me is I majored in theater at State University of New York in Oswego. And why I was attracted to doing theater is kind of, you know, you're attracted to things that you know, people upon first glance wouldn't have thought that would be the route I would have chosen. And the reason is my father, when I was 9 years old, started telling me about the Holocaust. He initially slipped up at the dinner table and said something about you know, being Jewish. And I was like, Daddy, what's a Jewish? And he said, Jewish is, it's a religion, it's a culture. No, it's a religion, it's what we are, what we are, but never ever tell anyone that you're Jewish. And these admonitions became standard, like starting that night and every night that ensued. He would wake me up in the middle of the night when, you know, his demons, his horrors would keep him awake at night and have me come into his room and tell me the stories. And I often would say, Daddy, do we have to talk about this? Can we talk about this? He'd say, who else do I have to talk to? Now, I wasn't the only one that got these stories, but by the time I was that age, you know, that's what happened to me. And you know, I also saw that it relieved him. He felt he looked lighter to me, you know, and you want to help your parents be happier. Everybody, every kid, every child wants their parents to be happy if their parents aren't, you know, horribly you know, abusive. At least that's what I would believe. So I was happy that he seemed a little bit you know, alleviated from his unhappiness. But these were horrible stories, and I was 9 years old. So all of a sudden my, you know, Kodachrome colored childhood you know, became very, you know, sepia tone, black and white, and yucky. And the stories took a toll on me as a little kid. And because I didn't hear happy stories. I very rarely heard anything happy about his childhood. And by that time, the schism in my family, you see, was the beginning of the end of their marriage when my dad decided to force the conversion upon my family. And he became increasingly paranoid. He was a very, very successful ophthalmologist, eye surgeon with 2 practices, beloved by his patients, many of who I got to meet because I'll tell you why in a minute. But his fear and his terror and who knows what else he'd been through. My mother wanted so desperately for us to be Jewish and to be who we are and for him to be well. And she tried to get him to go to see, a psychiatrist. And of course, like I said, my father was friends with Anna Freud and had studied with Sigmund and, had a big ego. And, he actually accused the psychiatrist of being the crazy one and got thrown out of the office of the psychiatrist's office. So my dad was a handful. And what had happened is he had made my mother, whose own brother, my uncle, who's, I feel very connected to him right now, but he is, passed many years ago, was a rabbi. And so of course my rabuncle wanted us to be Jewish, wanted to be, and so he pushed for it. And so much happened between my parents in terms of that and other things. And he made my mother out to be literally the enemy. So I grew up, they had recreated a war, but this time in within our family confines. And let's just say we weren't Little House on the Prairie, it was pretty yucky. And so he would tell me stuff and ask me if my mother did this and that. And there's literally a schism in the family. Some of the siblings were on my mom's side and some were on my dad's side. And that's how I grew up. So anyway, by the time I was 11, for whatever reason, my dad decided to send me to boarding school. He also sent 2 of my other siblings. I was heartbroken. I had no coping mechanism. I was scared of the entire world. I felt absolutely abandoned, but looking back, I'm really glad he did because, it wasn't the best environment. So I went to school in Lennoxville, Quebec, in the Laurentian Mountains, of course, a good, it was Anglican school, Christian Anglican school. And I, it's funny, I'm in touch with a number of my boarding school friends and roommates, and they told me they just thought that I was shy, but I literally couldn't look people in the eye because I thought they would hate me, because I figured if I couldn't tell people the truth and I was constantly being told people were going to kill us if they knew that we were Jewish, something must be very wrong with me. And so I had this horrific shame and terror and fear and anxiety. And really, one moment when I began studying acting in theater class in boarding school, I felt the alchemy of the lights on the stage. We were doing like a Romeo and Juliet scene. And I was, of course, using Shakespearean text. And it was freeing. All of a sudden, it was freeing. And that excited me. So that is why I decided to major in theater. I auditioned at, as I said before, State University of New York for the theater department, got in at the age of 15, which is when I graduated. And so I, excelled at times when I didn't edit myself. But I was so terrified of being judged. We're talking about this is not an ordinary stage fright or self-consciousness. It's the absolute terror of the opinions of others, because for me, the risk was, being called out for being Jewish, for being something's wrong. The other thing is, whenever I stood up to my father, who I love, and yes, of course, he became very, very ill, even though he took very good care of us financially. We went to good schools, yada, 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 well educated. And like I said, he had a practice and was very beloved by his patients. He really systematically indoctrinated all of us with this self-hatred, this terror of being who we are, right? And so what would happen to me is, in class, all of a sudden I'd be very lucid as an actress in university, and then all of a sudden I go into this crippling anxiety. It was very, very frustrating. This was well beyond people really knew about, children of survivors, and it wasn't talked about openly as it is now. And so I ultimately, after years and years of going back and forth, and they were so excited about my skills, and then they would think, what is wrong with, they thought I was creating it. I left university. I ended up back in Canada. I auditioned for other, went to George Brown College, majored in theater, different things. And so I got in, I studied theater. I got into Les Ballets Jazz de Montréal. I studied jazz ballet. I started with, Second City got very excited about me, and and wanted me to audition for the touring company. And, they said, we never do this right away, but we just, when I let go, I had a lot of fun. And, I was in touch with a little kid that's in all of us that never dies, right? And it wanted to come out and play so much because of my particular story. So, fast forward, I ended up, thinking, is it dance? Is it theater? Is it because it's the type of expression, of artistic expression, that maybe that's my stumbling block? So I kept changing it. Then I went and started stand-up comedy at Yuck Yucks, which is a chain of comedy clubs, very much like the American Improv chain. And I did really well. And okay, so now we're going to go back to this picture of the gingerbread man. So, for example, that's where I first started, in any way publicly talking about the fact that I was really Jewish. And so I would do these kind of sticky jokes. And so I talked about how, my parents were really Jewish, but they raised as Catholic. Like my mother would bake, Christmas. She was passive aggressive. She'd bake, these gingerbread men. And then you can go to the next slide if you want, Jeffrey, but she circumcised the gingerbread men. So she'd get it in their little ways, and the audience would laugh. And it felt unbelievable to me, unbelievable. But once again, oh yeah, and so sorry, my mother, you know what I'm saying? We just show, that's okay, Jeffrey, that was the challah. Like, I would joke about how she would take, instead of having a Christmas wreath, she'd make it out of challah, and so on and so forth. And the truth is, the owner of the club was very excited because I was also really, kind of improvising with the audience. So he took me aside one day, and he asked me what my story was. And he, the same though, paradigm, the same pattern of being really lucid and, playing on stage and being silly and everything was happening in the comedy club scene. And then I go into this paralyzing, crippling anxiety. I could not function. And again, it was not just normal stage fright. I mean, I literally would come on stage and forget my whole act, or I would get I would be really riffing with the audience and be getting a lot of laughs. And then I think, I wasn't conscious, but because I was being so vulnerable and so exposing myself and being so much myself, it was that old training. Never tell anyone who you are or it'll get you killed. I actually thought there would be Nazis in the audience, yada, yada. So I would paralyze, and I couldn't function. I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't breathe. And so Mark Breslin, the owner, who is a friend, took me backstage and said, listen, you're so young and so genius. You need what I call shock treatments. You do things that people who are much older than you don't. You take chances. Many people older than you don't on stage. I want to throw you in front of an audience, on the weekend. I'll give you, I think he said $500 or something, which at that time was a lot of money for me, still doesn't hurt. And he said, you only have to do 3 minutes. And if you do well, there'll be more. And I couldn't do it because by then I was, so sick of doing well. And then all of a sudden, the frustration of all of a sudden not being able to function, I was actually physically ill many times. And so I thanked him. I said, I can't. And they asked me a little bit. He said, so you're Jewish, right? Now, tell me about yourself. So I told him for the first time. He said, are your parents Holocaust survivors? And we talked backstage. And he said, most comics are Jewish and most comics need therapy. And then he told me about the Holocaust Center in Toronto. And I said, wow, well, I'm really watching my money. And he said, well, there's something called group therapy for comedians. So I started going to the Holocaust Center, and that helped me so magnificently in group therapy. And I could have stayed there and cried for years, but you know, I met children of Nazis, I met children of survivors, I met amazing people, and all this is in my book, by the way. And so what I'm going to fast forward now, so because I've really been going here, Jeffrey, and in 1995, I was, you know, touring across Canada doing stand-up comedy and stuff, but again, still coming up against these things, not as much, you know, doing well, getting great reviews, yada yada. I decided, it was like I felt like I had an inner voice that was telling me, write your story, right? And I thought that's what I was doing as a comedian, you know, and I ran into the same problem with Second City, by the way. It's like every time I tried to, you know, really expose who I was after doing well, I would go into this complete shutdown. So 1996, I decided that I was going to write my family story into a play. I just knew that I had to do something dramatic, something rash. So I called my father, who by then at 86 had retired and was living in his native Vienna as a Catholic underground, Dr. Sheridan. And I told him what I wanted to transform our of course, you know, our story into a play. Of course, he completely freaked out and said, you know, I'm going to take legal action, and I'm forbidden you. And, you know, it was, of course, out of his terror of wanting to protect me. And I also got that kind of a reaction from a number of different family members, not all, some were supportive, for sure. But, you know, it was like, here I was, the little sister, after everything our parents had done, I was going to expose the family and put us all at risk. And even though they're high functioning professionals, many of my siblings are still emotionally very paralyzed, very, very worried about being judged by other people. And I will say that, you know, people who work with those who are dying at the end of their lives, one of the most common laments is, I wish I hadn't cared so much what other people thought of me, because I would have done so much more with my life. Well, that really became my modus operandi. And so I created my first show, which was called The Waltonsteins, which is a play on the well-known TV show, the sitcom, The Waltons, right? Which was about a big Gentile family who were happy and lived on a mountain, and, you know, we weren't, right? And okay, so let's go to the next slide, please, Jeffrey. Well, there's, of course, the triangle shaped cookie that my mother referred to, the Hamantash, right? And we can go to the next one. And all of these, we can go to the next slide, Jeffrey. And all of these were referenced in my play. This is me at 9, right about when, this was taken by my beloved sister, Marilyn, who's with me from Non-Physical. And this is right about when my father started telling me these stories. And so I became this very, very serious little girl. Go ahead, next, please. And this is, by the way, from the newspaper in Morse. I contacted them in 1951 after my father's court case. You know, and of course, I have all this paperwork in my book to support what's going on when he was attacked, you know, by this couple, Mrs. Schmidt and Dr. Schmidt. Next, please, sir. And this is my beloved maternal grandmother, Selma Zwinicki, who was murdered on Kristallnacht. This is the rise and fall of the Third Reich, the William Shirer book, where this story is written. And of course, her family, my mother's family, had to, you know, sign a lie with the Gestapo saying that I think she died of a heart attack, but they did put the truth in this book. Not the Gestapo, the writer, Shirer. Next slide, please. This is where my maternal grandmother's murder is depicted. You can go to the next slide. And this is me in boarding school, Bishop's College School, Lennoxville, Quebec. And I was very young. I skipped a bunch of grades, you know, Jewish parents, right? And so I'm in the front row. I'm the one trying to be as tall as the little girl there who was my roommate. My shoulders are up. I'm, you know, second from the left. You can go to the next slide, Jeffrey. So here's what happened. Well before I did my play, this is my beloved mother's headstone. from the Jewish cemetery outside of Ottawa in Canada. And before my mother died, she died very young at the age of 68, you know, she converted back to Judaism. And with the help of my rabuncle, my rabbi uncle, Gerd Wiener, she converted back to Judaism, and it really planted a seed in me, unbeknownst to me at the time, you know. And so this is me doing the Waltonsteins after my show at the, I think, the Museum of Civilization in Hull, Quebec, which is close. These are my 4 eldest siblings who came. And let me tell you, there's nothing scarier than having your 4 eldest siblings sitting in the front row. This was like a 900-seat state-of-the-art theater. It was amazing sensory overload. But let me tell you, what had happened was an incredible thing. If this wasn't enough, because I got so much media attention, an incredible 9-page feature article was written by this beautiful journalist who's become a friend in that Shelley Page. She went to Vienna to interview my dad. She interviewed my sister Marilyn, who's here, different people in my family, and created this beautiful piece. And as a result of that, it was read by legendary film director of Love Story and, you know, so many others, Arthur Hiller. He was, of course, the little guy who used to come out and announce the Academy Awards, you know, with all the hair. He was the director of the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences for many, many years. He read it. He contacted me. I thought it was a joke. All of a sudden I got a phone call, you know, hello, Arthur Hiller for Frannie Sheridan. And I said, this doesn't sound like Arthur Hiller. And it was his longtime secretary, because, you know, she'd been with him through the 50s. That was a woman named Brenda. And that's how they were trained to, you know, represent the sort of the big machers. And he got on the phone. And, you know, I had a screenwriter, my first screenwriting partner at that time, was amazed because Arthur asked if, you know, I had an associated screenplay, and we had a multicast feature film screenplay, and he asked to have it sent. So I said, okay, I think that would be all right with me, Mr. Hiller. So I sent him the screenplay anyway. So here I am after my first performance in Ottawa, and they had like Donahue style microphones set up in the, you know, in the audience, and people would ask, and it was a big Q&A. It was a big, beautiful theater, as I said. Who stands up all of a sudden? Arthur Hiller. Well, the audience just freaked out because he's, you know, was really well known at that time with all of his hair and yada yada, and came to the microphone and told me that, you know, he really enjoyed the screenplay, and we would talk later. And they threw a huge party for me, and Arthur attached himself to direct the film, and I had the incredible pleasure of working with him for 12 years. And, you know, we had a deal actually at one point, but various reasons didn't happen. But he kept, you know, Arthur was with us until he was 89, you know, developed macular degeneration. So towards the end of his life, he of course was living out his golden years. He could no longer try to get the film made. But like he said, you know, it's, he was very excited because, as I'm sure you know, many powerful, beautiful, brilliant, compelling, dramatic, painful stories and scripts crossed his path. But he decided, partly I think because he was originally Canadian, that he wanted to make my film. And he, you know, and I will say though, there's interest now for my revision, which is a whole other story. But let's move ahead now, if we could please, Jeffrey. And there's Arthur. Okay, that's good timing. That's the last time I had lunch with him at Carney's, which is right behind him on Sunset in Los Angeles. That was his favorite cheeseburger in the world. And there he is with the cane of the blind, you know. I was just very, very blessed. Just a humble, lovely, lovely man. Now, I'm not saying that there are not a lot of lovely, lovely people in Hollywood, and there are, but let's just say he was one of the great ones. All right, let's go to the next. And so after I did the Waltonsteins, I decided I wanted to, because it was very, very well received. I got like through the Jerusalem Report magazine, for example, which I'm sure many of you know is published in Jerusalem and released in every major international port in the world. As a result of that, if you remember earlier, I mentioned that we'd extended relatives who, when we went underground, when my father converted to Catholicism, anglicized our name from Siegel to Sheridan, fled to another city entirely, Ottawa, ultimately. Didn't tell any extended relatives where he was. They were looking, they were searching for us for 45 years. So when I did my play, and had this incredible media attention, all of a sudden I started getting these incredibly moving phone calls from my extended relatives who I'd never known all over the world. Hello, is this Francis Sheridan? I was sitting on the Chesterfield reading my favorite magazine, the Jerusalem Report, and they would cry. And they recognized the story, and they recognized there were pictures of my parents, of course. And so we had this very, very moving reunion. And so that, was a very big deal to me. And what it did is my father, as I said, was living underground, still as a Catholic in Vienna. The power of the media, the power of our far-reaching family story, having created healing in the family, and also some of my siblings who had been less than happy that I was exposing the truth of our family, thanked me. And, all of these things that were happening, Arthur Hiller and all that, I believe lifted some of my father's survival guilt, and he was really getting towards the end of his life. And he sent me a very beautiful letter of thanks for helping him to have the courage to return to his Jewish roots, which he did. And he publicly revoked his Catholicism, converted back to Judaism. And that's the feather in my hat. And it made me want to keep going with the play. And my father is buried in the Central Jewish Cemetery in Vienna as a Jew. So my next play was a more character-driven Confessions of a Jewish Shiksa. That's a billboard up there that I got, which was amazing. There's my sweet daddy towards the end of his life. That's okay. That's all right, Jeff. You can jump. Yeah, that was kind of exciting for me. And this is my darling father, looking happy. Towards the end of it, I went, saw him in Vienna to around this time. And you can move ahead now. And this is my dad's tombstone. And his, apparently I did not go to his funeral. I had just been there recently to Vienna, and I just, I don't remember why exactly, but I was obviously there, so in spirit. But it was attended by the entire Hasidic Viennese community who had heard about my father's story. And Rabbi Izzy Butel was my father's paternal grandfather, who was the rabbi who had such a big impact on him and was a Hasidic Jew. And so, it was a very emotional, beautiful thing for my father and for the community to come and be with him that way. You can go to the next one, Jeffrey. Oh yeah, okay, so here I am, proudly Jewish, publicly. And what does a nice Jewish girl do when she wants to? She joins J-Date. So what did I do? I joined J-Date, and after date number 754,1192 to the pi of 8 blueberry pie, I met, my Besheret. So go ahead to the next one. My Israeli husband. And we were married 17 years ago on the beach under the chuppah. What can I say? I'm a lucky girl. Is that the last one? I think that's the last slide. Yeah, you can leave it on that last one if you want, or whatever. So we knew right away, we knew right away that we had a big connection, but I met him 2 weeks before I moved to LA. I was still working with Arthur. So I'll just say, I just thought, why am I not with my best friend? So I gave him a very unhealthy ultimatum. He was living in New York as well as Florida. I was in Los Angeles and Florida at this time. Because I toured for many, many years internationally with my play. I worked with Avi Hoffman and yada, yada, yada. And by then I had, my writer-actor visa and all that, so things were great. But I just wanted to be with my best friend. And so I gave him a very unhealthy ultimatum, as I started to say. I said, move to Florida. We had met here, and leave New York, to be at his business there and everything. And let's commit and make a go of it, or let's move on. And he did. And so that's That's my story. And there's so much more to my book because I've had a very unorthodox journey in addition, out of my shame, out of my fear, my terror, my paralyzing anxiety, and some pretty, juicy, irreverent things. And I'll just leave that up to you. Take a look at the book and you can decide whether it's something you might want. I've been told it's a page turner, but then I'm a little biased. All right.
Well, I want to thank you, Frannie, but I also don't want to leave you. You have a new project that I want you to let everyone know, with your husband and others, about your healthcare.
Oh, sure. Oh, that's so incredibly generous of you, Jeffrey. Yeah. Well, really, here's the deal. I'm all about, welcome to my wellness party. It really is my journey. And so one of the things that we did is, since the beginning of Schmorona, lockdowns, whatever you want to call it, I started doing love streams to huge audiences. I was dancing, I was sharing love. I was just feeling it out there, just letting it come through me. And being the playful little kid that we all are, it took me many, many years to get back to, but it is the healthiest thing for me to do. Well, what happened approximately 2 months ago is I became physically very, very ill. Didn't know what it was. Fast forward, watch this video, very obnoxious, nonstop video was coming in. Watch me, my live stream. And you get all these things, right? And my husband said, how can I support you, honey? What can we do? I said, let's watch this. Maybe it'll distract me. It changed our lives. We flew to Verona, New Jersey, went to this health system. It's called the EE system. It's energy enhancement system, was created by a scientist who is Mensa, who happens to be the child of 2 NASA scientists. And it is, I'm not gonna try even to tell you exactly what it does, but it's a combination of photonic, because we're made of light, photonic and scalar energy, and it creates the perfect environment cellularly for people to allow in healing. We're not healing anything. This is not like taking a Tylenol, right? It's not that kind of thing. But I'll tell you, after 2 hours in this system, my horrific pain and whatever it was gone. My husband has tinnitus. After 2 hours, his was gone. And so we were there for a week. It's very cost effective too. It was like 40 or 60 bucks an hour, something like that. And after the week, we were so energized. We never listen, I have my screenplay. I have my love streams. I have different things I was doing. My husband has a successful organic Mediterranean food company, but we just thought, how can we create this for other people? It's not a franchise. It's not a MLM or anything like that. We decided to open a wellness center with the same system, and we're doing it. And it's like the last thing, and I'm so that I would, thought that I would be doing, but we're doing it. And then we're opening it in January here in West Palm Beach. And it's called Loving Light Regeneration. There are so many peer-reviewed studies, so many testimonials of, doctors from neurology centers to you name it have used it, allopathic, non-allopathic. Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm happy that you can share that, but I do want to move into the Q&A. So
absolutely.
And so I'm going to open this up for everyone. You can,
sure.
If you have a question for our guests. Now, I want to also let you know that Ruthie and Manci couldn't stay with us.
Oh.
And they were tired, and so they left. And also Daniel had to scoot out. So we're with Frannie and we're with Tommy, and we're opening up for anybody with questions. Please hit your raise your hand button if you have any questions. And I'll start off with one for Tommy. When was where was your mother from in Czechoslovakia, and when were they deported?
My mother wasn't from Czechoslovakia. She was from Hungary.
Yeah.
They were deported. She was in Debrecen, and they were deported in May of 1944.
Okay. And are there any questions for our presenters? All right, well, I'll tell you. Go ahead. Who's talking? Go ahead.
I put my hand, but I don't know. We can pass.
Oh, yes, I see it. Well, welcome.
Okay.
Jackie,
All right.
please take the floor.
In fact, I apologize. It's not a question, it's a feeling. And I feel so so good, so sad, so emotional, whatever, all the feelings when we talk so much about mothers and what mothers have done for our lives. I just wanted to share that because it's
Beautiful.
you have both and all express it very, very well. And you talk about your mom, and I apologize. I think about mine at the same time.
That's a ditto.
Wanted to say
That's a
thank you
ditto
for
for
that.
me as well. I couldn't get my mom out of my head this whole hour, and it was full 2 hours, so it was beautiful. And it was a real
If I say
testament.
something else, Jeffrey,
Well, let me
and
ask,
I'm sure.
hold on a second. Mark raised his hand. I'll get back to you. I want to make sure we get
Okay.
everyone.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I love the stories about mom. My mom was 5 feet tall,
Oh,
and my parents had a terrible marriage. I spoke a few months ago about this, and she was the first female liberationist I ever knew. She fought tooth and nail to get a driver's license, to learn English, and to get a job. And I always wondered why she was the way she was. I'll never forget one time we were in the Catskill Mountains, and she'd gone to Loch Sheldrake to pick up a cake. And she served the cake, and it was half eaten. And 2 days later, a friend of ours who was a baker said, she served the cake again, and the baker said, "This is an awful cake." So my mother got me into her Cadillac to drive all the way back to Loch Sheldrake and return the cake. And the poor girl who was working in the bakery had no way of knowing what she was dealing with. And there was such a lot of mishigas that the woman who owned the bakery came out to see what the commotion was, recognized my mother and said, "Give her the 2 babka and get her the hell out of here." So all I can say is, Tommy, you may have inherited the chutzpah, but I have to tell you, because of the way I was brought up, I did not. And it took me a long, long time, and still does, to get me to share even a story about my mom right now. So thank you very much for sharing it.
Well,
And thank
you
you
did a lot
everybody
of,
for sharing it.
and Mark, you've done a lot of sharing. You've written a trilogy called The Devil's Bookkeeper. It's sitting right behind you. And Mark presented to the group. You can see his presentation on our YouTube channel. So you do tell a great story about your parents too. So back to you, Jackie.
Thank you,
No,
Jeffrey.
it's just because we are talking about mother, I think my Yiddish mama, and I was reading the lyrics in different languages. I will probably sing it at a retirement home and things like that. And they are so powerful. And when you have nothing to do for 2 minutes, I know you know the lyrics, I know you know the songs, but go back to it.
And right next to Jackie is Sammy, and Sammy and Jackie are going to be presenting, and might as well do it right now. They'll be presenting in both together in our September program. It's called We of the Tree of Life. I'm not going to spoil it. It's a terrific program with Sammy and Jackie, and you have to come back. I want to give you some heads up, all of you. I'll take the next. You've seen me be silent on Facebook for the last several days. You haven't normally see posts all the time. Unfortunately, Facebook has kicked me off of Facebook and removed me as the admin for our group. And my friend, Dana Schrager, if you can get on screen, I want to acknowledge you to everyone in the group, came in and saved the day yesterday by coming in and taking over the admin for the group. So not a bad actor can steal the group and make it imploded. It's a very important group to all of us. We have over 3,600 members. And I have no position at the moment in Facebook in my old account. So if you try to message me, you won't find me. If you try to look my profile up, you won't find me. I'm person non grata at the moment on Facebook. So I have to figure out how to return. I lost 4,000 contacts. my friends are all gone, which I have to rebuild. So I wanted to all acknowledge you. If you know anybody who's a friend of yours, please let them know what's going on. Dana is the admin until I can figure out how to get back and take over the group again. I want to thank Dana for her efforts yesterday, and on the weekend she was like, I put an SOS out to Dana, and she came through like a true trooper and true friend, and I love you for that. So thank you, and many other reasons. So you should know that Facebook's AI filters are just completely wacky, and I should have been known better of what I posted, but it was caught in 2 seconds, and I was completely booted off of Facebook. So and Dana, you can tell us what you experienced when you did some research on Facebook, and I think everyone in the group should know.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. I'm Jeffrey's temporary placeholder as admin for the group. So we'll hold down the fort until I know Jeffrey will find his way back to Facebook one way or another. I think he's waiting for some kind of appeal. In any case, I run 2 Jewish cooking groups on Facebook, and I did some research. I'm in some administrator groups, and many group members are complaining
She wrote to
that
me
the Facebook.
I would say, you're so sweet and freaking talented, Tommy. You made me really belly laugh.
What was I going to say? Oh, okay. So what I was saying is the AI on Facebook is very overzealous right now. Jeffrey's not the only one that this has happened to, but we have to be careful, all of us, when we're posting and when we're commenting, to not use words that will catch the AI. It's not seen by a human eye. It's just the technology, the algorithm catching things. So we can't show pictures of guns or talk about weapons or the military or anything that could be misconstrued as talking about terrorists. You can't post too often. I sent Jeffrey a whole list of things to watch for because I researched this further after Jeffrey's issue. So anyway, don't show pictures of Israeli soldiers holding guns. That's not allowed. Don't sell puppies. There's a whole list of things you can't do, or you could get put in Facebook jail. So we'll get Jeffrey out of Facebook jail and carry on.
Now, I'm not in Facebook jail. Now, what was really amazing, another thing I should teach you, is when in 2021, when I opened the group, I also thought we should do Zoom programmings. And my wife was also doing Zoom, so we needed to separate our user IDs. So I created a user ID using a Facebook password. And so when Facebook took me down the other day, they also took Zoom down. So all of the programs that I have produced and put into Zoom through 2023 have all been disappeared as well. So the reason why you received a new URL this yesterday or today is because I didn't have a program on Zoom. And though I was promoting it for a full month, they took away the URL. So I had to convince people, I had to get to you a new URL. So I'm very grateful that more than 45 of you were able to come on and see that post that I made, and Dana and others were very good for me to be able to post the URL into it. So I wanted you to know that I'm alive. If anybody contacts you and says, where's Jeff? Because I do make quite a bit of a posting trail. I'm still here and I'm figuring it out. Now, what's interesting about Facebook, that they trap you because they have your username, your email address, your phone number, and your IP address. And they're hooking all of those technologies together. So if you come up with another, another email address, but you have the same phone number, you can't get in. If you come up with a new phone number and you use a new email address, but you're on the same computer, you're on the same IP address, they won't let you, they stop you and trap you from getting in. So I have to now come up with a new phone number, a new email address, and I have to get a new IP address, which means that's a much more complicated situation. So it's going to take me a few minutes, a few days to come back. But anyway,
do they tell you why they kick you off?
No.
Yeah.
No, they don't. They basically say that your post violates community standards. They don't tell you why the post violates community standards. And all of a sudden, my Facebook page explodes. All of a sudden I get these messages. You have to put in your text so I can. It was just a disaster, and
But are you certain that it's Facebook and not something
yes,
else?
no, it's
Yeah.
definitely Facebook.
There's 100%.
Yeah,
It's not a hacking or whatever.
It's 150%.
Yeah.
Is there an
What
appeal
did you
process? Is there
say
an
or
appeal
what did you do?
process?
What do I do? I have to wait for.
Yeah, what what did they write?
They didn't write anything.
what's
I
the-
just got a pop-up saying you've violated community standards. Please make a copy of your driver's license. Please give me your phone number. I send you a text alert to make sure you're verified that you're there. And then they said, well, we're behind. We're behind in answering these issues because we were out because of COVID and we had lost people. So we're not sure exactly when we're going to get back to you, but it's every time you go to Facebook, I get here, I'll show you. I might as well show you. It's fun to.
This is crazy.
It's fun to get sick. So I'll show you.
Crazy.
No, Jeffrey, Jeffrey, don't send it. If it's something of hacking like I had, you don't know
No,
what
it's
you are
not-
going to do.
It's not hacking, but just hold on.
Okay, you are saying that.
It's not hacking. Just watch. I have uploaded my ID more than 24 times.
Yeah.
So you can see that I'm totally locked out and I can't get in no matter what I'm trying. So we'll see. But it really teaches us a lesson, because I have to come back and reconnect with you and make you all friends again, which I'm going to do. But I'm also thinking that I can't survive and put the group at risk. So I'm thinking about building a separate website and taking all of my content and putting it onto that website so I control it. But that will take some time.
Sorry, can I ask you, what happened to your YouTube? Is that still safe?
Yeah, no, that's still there.
That's still
there. It was just my Facebook and Zoom. And the Zoom was, I was able to get rid of the Facebook password because my Zoom originally was built around my Facebook ID. And when I figured out how to get, so I was going absolutely berserko. So when I figured out how to get my Zoom back with all of the events that I created, then I was relieved. So I was able to change the password, change the user ID, and get my Zoom back. So that's how I got this program. And that's why I had to create a new URL and get it out there to everyone who showed up. So, well, I want to, what?
Did you Google what happens if you are kicked off Facebook?
Yeah, you lose it forever. If they don't,
I got a warning once, but
Yeah,
that was it.
Yeah, no, this was serious. This was seriously a shot in the head. So we'll see.
So
But anyway,
I'll post in the group the Facebook text with the community standards. But we all know Jeffrey. He's a very upright and generous and loving and moral human being. He didn't truly violate the community standards. The trouble is that innocent things get misinterpreted by the computer AI scanner, the artificial intelligence, looking for things, misinterprets things. They don't understand context. It's not a human being, it's a computer. It doesn't understand context. So a lot of people get caught in this net. It's overzealous, this artificial intelligence. And there's many other group administrators this has happened to. And I hear them talking in these Facebook groups for administrators. So Jeffrey's very smart, very computer savvy. He will either get out of the current predicament or find another way around. So don't fear. Jeffrey will be back on Facebook soon.
Hey.
Just give him a chance to work through it.
I have an S under here. That's okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the program today. I wanted to leave you with a little bit of my father would call this, God bless his soul, Rabbigeld. And that means the rabbi you had to give money to the rabbi for education or for tips or for advice. So this is my weekend's Rabigeld that I remember my father from. So I love you guys. Thank you for participating. Thank you for presenting, Tommy and Frannie, and for Daniel. The recording will be up on YouTube, on our YouTube page by Monday. We already have over 3,000 streams of programming. There's over 90 programs online. If any one of you are interested in telling your show a family story, I know many of you have contributed an Obligation of Memory podcast. It's behind me there. I'd be more than willing to talk to you about a recording. The demand for recordings is far outpacing whatever I thought would be. It's unbelievable. I'm now setting appointments quite a bit in the distance. So please, Mark has already done his interview. Dana has part of his interview. Sammy has done it. Jackie has done it. And Blima is coming next month to do it. Zola is coming next month. So I want you, Ava. I want you. You got to come. You got to come and do your interview. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to turn the program off now, and you'll see it live tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Love you,
Jeffrey.
Frannie.
Bye, everybody.
Love
Thank
you,
you.
Frannie.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
seeing
you so
everybody.
much.
Thank you, everybody.
Lots of love.
September
Thank you.
18th is our next event.
Okay, that was very
September 18th.
moving. Thank you, presenters.
Very
Thank you, Jackie.
wonderful,
Thank you
everybody.
so much.
Thank
Lots
you.
of love.